Nitai Gaur Haribol, Nitai Gaur Haribol. So, we're talking about the emergence of Krishna consciousness in Sydney, Australia in 1971. And when Prabhupada had come, he asked the president of the temple, who at that time was Jitapad, why I was married. Because the temple president told me that I should marry one of the girls and live a Krishna conscious life as a householder. So I didn't know all the dynamics behind it, but I said, all right. So I was married, and they actually invited the television station to film it in Sydney, which they did. And we did Rupendra did the fire sacrifice in the backyard, and but anyway, when Prabhupada came, he said, who married Upananda? So the temple president said, well, Prabhupada, I did. And then Prabhupada, became very coarse and said, why you did this without my approval? He's my disciple. So the temple president, realized you cannot act whimsically in the position of an authority. You have to do everything under proper guidance. So then Prabhupada said, well, what can I do? Now everything's said and done. It's too late. So when I heard that, I realized, I wasn't really meant to be a householder. Prabhupada wanted me to be a brahmachari without raising a family. And I can remember, I was living in the temple. I wasn't really eager to work. And when I didn't have much luck trying to get a job in Sydney anyway. So it came to pass, we moved. I took the wife, Ahula, I think Prabhupada gave her the name Ahuya. And with the Pendra, we went to open another temple in Melbourne, Australia. So, before I get to that, I'll just add one more thing about Prabhupada's first visit to Sydney in 1971, because I was the first one to start cooking for Prabhupada, but I wasn't really qualified. Although Prabhupada, after he took lunch, said that I should make more of the sweets, and the next day he had somebody else cook. But he liked the Simply Wonderfuls I made. So from that point, I was addicted to the sweets anyway, so I had no problem making more sweets. And true to fact, the Australian powdered milk and ghee was the best in the world. And Prabhupada actually asked if the devotees from Australia would please bring ghee to Mayapur for the annual festival. It was so good. So yeah, we made Simply Wonderfuls daily, distributed them in the streets of Sydney, and I think those Simply Wonderfuls made more devotees than anything else. And later we switched over to another sweet, which was coconut honey balls. We had coconut, we had honey, and we had powdered milk and some Australian dried fruits. Those were also a great hit. And prasadam was, a highlight of Australian preaching from that point on. So, anyway, getting on to Melbourne, we started with Upendra in a small rented flat, which was, I think I remember, only like $10 a week or something. It was so cheap. And we were distributing back to Godhead in the streets of Melbourne. And then we were chanting, basically on the steps of the post office there. And many people in Melbourne were quickly attracted. Upendra would preach in the streets. After the kirtan would stop, he would start preaching. So many boys and girls joined. Jaya Dharma, Dvaipayana, some ladies also. And we moved to a place in near the university. And we started there for a while, maybe half a year. And Bhagavan, the Swedish devotee, and his wife Parvati also were there. And Upendra was there. And then we had a devotee, Sanak, who was from Greece. And he had found a building in St. Kilda. So we rented that building, and that's where we received Prabhupada in 1972. So similar to when he came to Sydney for the first time, when he came to Melbourne for the first time, he installed all the deities of Radha Vallabha, which were bigger than the deities in Sydney by far. And Radharani was very exquisitely attractive. So much so that Prabhupada said that because of the excellence of Radharani's beauty, that Krishna would never leave Melbourne. So we installed the deities in the temple, and we had, I think, one devotee, Shyamasundar or Shyamananda. He was helping in constructing Prabhupada's Vyasasan and the altar. And it was a two-story rented, what do you call it? I don't know what they call it, a flat or whatever, kind of sandwiched in between a bunch of other flats. And Makala joined, Amoga became her husband. He came from America. It was quite an upsurge of Krishna consciousness when we would chant with harmonium and cartels madranga right opposite the town hall in the main square of Melbourne. And we had, quite a crowd, listening to us. And we would have a little competition. There was a professor from the university, they called the Wizard. So he would also come there, and he would get a big crowd, and we had a big crowd, and every day it was quite an event, which we looked forward to. So Sunday feasts were a big attraction. A lot of prasadam was cooked up, and a lot of people were joining and coming and reading and chanting with us. So Prabhupada came in the summer in 72, which is when we put on a big event for Prabhupada's visit. And I think we also had Rath Yatra that year. And we had one devotee from America come who was in charge of the Gurukula previous to this, and he had purchased a double-decker bus in Sydney. And he started the Spiritual Sky business to bring in more money to finance things. And we painted the bus Hare Krishna Movement, the positive alternative, and that was going all around Sydney, and everybody was seeing it. And Vaiṣṇava-saṅga had been sent to Australia also. So Prabhupada came and installed the deities of Radha Vallabha, initiated so many devotees, gave so many lectures. It was quite an experience for everybody. And we had a devotee also called Kurma. Kurma was from Sydney, but he came down to Melbourne and was assisting with cooking. He was attracted to cooking, and later on he became very famous publishing books about vegetarian cooking, and is considered a world authority on vegetarian cuisine. And he's moved to Ireland, so he lives in Ireland with his wife, or his third wife. He had a couple others. So now he's very happy, and he was the first devotee who could play the drum. Nobody else was really good at playing the mridanga, but he mastered it very quickly, so we always depended on him for playing the drum. And when he came to Melbourne, his parents had, or a relative had, Victorian furniture. So we brought all that furniture into the Prabhupada's room upstairs, which we made available for Prabhupada. And Prabhupada came, we had the installation of the deities, initiation of the devotees, and everybody was in total bliss. It was just like a spiritual world. I don't know. So Prabhupada, he gave a lecture at the town hall, Melbourne Town Hall, even though we were being arrested in Melbourne a lot and put in jail for selling the books on the street, Back to Godhead and other books. But we put on this event, and we made a big poster, myself and a devotee from Canada named Vaiṣṇava-saṅga. So we both collaborated, and we made a big red poster with Prabhupada's picture. And we had put on the top of the poster, Jagat Guru, comes to Australia. And then we put the time of the event, April 7th, 1972, Town Hall. And we put the poster, we would go out at night, like midnight, for 2 hours, 3 hours. We'd put the poster all up on the walls where, there was nobody's business but some wall or something. And we also covered up a lot of other posters to make sure people knew Prabhupada was going to be at the town hall. And at that time there was a Guru Maharaji who was preaching also around the world, who was supposedly an incarnation of God, a young kid. And we covered up his poster with Prabhupada because we didn't like him saying he was God. So the event was a huge success. Many university people came, many people in this town, city of Melbourne. It was packed. And I remember when Prabhupada, we went downtown in the car, Nanda Kishore, Prabhupada's servant, was there, Shyama Sundar, who helped start the preaching in London. Myself, and I think one other person. We were driving around Melbourne before the lecture, the event, and then Prabhupada was looking at some of the buildings on Burke Street and Swanson Street, and he would point and said, "Oh, these buildings." And we said, "Yes, Prabhupada." He says, "When they sell them, you should buy them." And we said, "Yes, Prabhupada." We didn't have, any kind of money to buy a building, but Prabhupada said we should buy them. And then we came back to the town hall. Prabhupada sat on his Vaiṣṇava-saṅga, which was on the stage. It was a beautiful town hall, well designed, the big balcony. And there was Nanda Kishore chanting in the beginning. Mohanananda, he was the one who started the school in Dallas. He was there also. He chanted also later. So a lot of people were swept up in the kirtan, and then Prabhupada gave a very dynamic lecture. And then the kirtan at the end, after some questions, was also amazing. So the wizard who was preaching, on the town square daily next to us, he was there. He was a professor from the university, but he was a little bit odd. So he came up to the microphone when we asked for questions. So he said, "Your divine grace." Prabhupada said, "Yes." He says, "I think I am God." So when he said that, a lot of devotees wanted to come up and grab the mic and take it away from him. But Prabhupada said, "No, let me answer the question." So Prabhupada explained, "Yes, you think you're God. Actually, this is the problem in the mature world. Everyone wants to enjoy like they're God, to be the number one person, the supreme. And this is the cause of your repeated birth and death. You have to renounce this enjoying mentality. Understand you are the servant of God. You are Krishna Das." So Prabhupada explained to him, the basic philosophy of Krishna consciousness. So the wizard, the professor was listening. So then, after Prabhupada explained some more, he thanked him and sat down. So it was a huge success, and Prabhupada came back to the temple, and we served him some puffed rice and fried peanuts and some raisins and milk. He liked having milk at night, and it was an institution. Everybody had a cup or two of milk and sugar and vanilla or saffron or something. So Prabhupada said, "Okay, play the tape again. I want to hear," because we recorded it. He says, "Play it. I want to hear." So he was eating, and he had a classic style of eating. His jaw would move to this side and that side while eating. It was mesmerizing just watching Prabhupada, masticate, chew, and listen to the tape. So we're all watching and listening to the lecture again, and then just when the lecture came to an end, and Prabhupada kind of gave a signal, and now we should go. He wanted to take rest. So we all got up and left, and then the next morning he called for me and Vaiṣṇava-saṅga Swami. He wanted to talk to us. So we came into his room, and Prabhupada looked at us, we bowed down, and then he said, "You have made the poster?" And we were very proud because so many people came, and we thought, wow, Prabhupada's going to lavish us with praise for getting so many people to come. And so we said, "Yes, Prabhupada, we made the poster." And then he became a little serious, and he said, "Why you didn't put my name on the poster?" And we thought, oh my God. We didn't put his name on the poster. All we put was Jagaguru comes to Australia. So we didn't know what to say. Prabhupada, I'm sorry, we just made a mistake, I guess. And Prabhupada kind of grinned and said, "No, it's all right, so many people came, so no problem." So that was so funny. So we also took Prabhupada to a monastery way out in the countryside, a Cistercian monastery, monks who were raising cattle, but it was on a Friday afternoon, and again, this is April 1972. So we all got in the car, and then I set up the program, so I was the only one who knew how to get there. And there was no GPS or anything. I didn't even think, we had maps, but I was just trying to remember how I went there the first time. And then Mohananda, who was the driver, he said, "Well, should I stop for gas?" And I said, No, let's not disturb Prabhupada in the gas station. Let's keep going. So he drove all the way to this place during, congested traffic hour, like 4 in the afternoon in Melbourne. And it was, a long trip, more than 2 hours, I think 2.5 hours. So we got there, it was dark, and Prabhupada went into the lecture hall and gave a lecture. So we'll continue from that point in the next portion.